Why knowledge matters.
So in the book, I share a story about a student who has a lot of energy and a lot of anger, and brings that to the front early in the time in the classroom of my time getting to know him. And this idea around mutually assured destruction comes from my political science background. Actually, a few of the framing and the ways that I think about things stem from that. The basic the upshot is that we can and must stop disciplining and punishing students for things when the discipline and punishment um, alters the trajectory of their learning permanently and negatively. And it is not the only way. So for this particular student, they hand in a test, they kind of, or a pre-test, they slam it on the desk. There's curse words written across it. And there's a moment, right? Deborah Ball talks about discretionary spaces, and there's a moment to decide: are you enforcing discipline policies? Are you not? Are you thinking creatively? What's the impact? What's the impact to the student? What's the impact to the class? What's the tone? Are you right? There are so many factors to consider there. And in real time, we don't get to press pause necessarily and just think through all the options, which is why I invite the reader to sort of engage in that reflection offline, if you will, right? Like pause and think about what's happening here so that when you're in the moment, you can make a really informed decision. Power struggles, conflict, anger. When we have middle school, high school students who are children developing the skills they need to navigate a complex world, and their brains are still developing the skills, and they show us that they don't have what it takes to remain calm, very much like a toddler may tantrum, throw a fit. We are faced with choices about what happens next, and we are the power brokers in the room as teachers and the system of education, the school, the district. So with this student, with many students, I think it's our responsibility to ask, how can we help this student and the class of students who are all watching know that it is so normal to lose your temper, and it's so normal to be angry, and that when that happens, they're not alone, right? So the sending out of a student, the writing of a referral, in school suspension, out of school suspension, all of those things signal out. They signal other, they signal you don't belong here, and neither does your anger. I would say that that seventh or eighth grader, if they had a better way to manage their anger, they would have. They don't have the tools, or they lost sight of the tools. And as adults, we can certainly appreciate what it's like when your anger is so big or your sadness is so big and you really cannot rein it in. And so, how we show up for students in that space to say, like, I see exactly, like, I think about this framing of like, it's okay to be mad, preferred you had not done X, Y, and Z thing, but really discerning the right course of action that is, again, a move to cultivate engagement and belonging rather than to signal that, like, if you are just a seventh grader, just an eighth grader, having the life you're having the day you're having, that you're like banished, right? That you can't, that you don't belong in that space. And that the adult also can't handle the thing that just came up. And that can be really scary for kids to experience, that feeling that not only was the feeling big for them, but it was also too big for the grown-ups. And then they're like, wow, I am as scary on on the outside as I am on my insides. And that's tough. That's a tough place to be in. I don't think teachers necessarily can. I know teachers can't do it all. We can't be clinical psychologists unless we're trained. We cannot, right? There are a lot of needs that need to be addressed and that are signaled. We can take that moment though and say, this is really good information about what this student needs. And as a professional, as a grown-up, I'm going to go engage with other adults and professionals to figure out how we meet this student's needs before I make a decision about what's next for them. So this notion around mutually assured destruction is sort of like what happens when nation states are in conflict and they both have nuclear weapons and they're escalating. And what will happen is y'all will destroy each other. And that can happen in classroom interactions as well, between students or between students and teachers. Y'all can escalate, 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 and then destruction. The individual is destroyed, the class environment is destroyed. It's like a wasteland. And we have to see that coming and recognize our part in it and stop. We have to be able to de-escalate and figure out the ways that we can. It's maintaining essential classroom dynamics with respect, with all these other pieces, but it's basically walking away from or not engaging in the part of the process that just ratchets everybody up and then it blows, right? It's harmful, it's dangerous. And those experiences are formative, right? Those kids are learning what happens when I get wired or get like spun up, and how do I get ratcheted back down? And we can model it, we can learn how to do it. We can show students that they're worthy of our time to figure that out, and that I'm more interested in the student's holistic journey as a learner than I am in sort of like enforcing a particular rule at that moment. And all of this is contextual. All of this requires an adult professional to sort of discern what's going on, and often consulting with other adults to say, like, what's going on here? What else do we know about what this kid needs and how we can meet those needs? And transparently knowing that when you're in this one-on-one interaction, all your other students are taking notes about your safe, like, am I safe here? Can I belong here? What happens if I have a need that's outside the norm or something like that?
That's why knowledge matters. Make your life a masterpiece. Visit now programs.d-ykm.com.